Hello, everyone, and welcome to Flawless, a music podcast. My name is Grant, and I'm joined tonight by my co-host Liam.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Flawless.
Each episode, one of the hosts or a guest proposes an album which they believe to be flawless. We do a whole lot of prep around it, make notes, and in the session now we discuss why it's flawless and give it a thumbs up or thumbs down. We have a Facebook group. We are Flawless Friends and Family. The link is in the show notes, and we'd like to announce there in advance what albums we're covering. We also have a Patreon, and for as little as $1 a month, you can back us and receive exciting things like bonus episodes. And again, the link is in the show notes, but you can find us on patreon.com/flawlessamp. Now, tonight is an exciting night in particular because we have a guest. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Thank you very much. My name is Graham Ashton, or better known as Asho. I've been around Brisbane music my whole life. I run a music company called Footstomp Music, and as a hobby, I write and record songs in a band called Gesticulations.
Thank you very much. That is exciting. And you've got a couple of albums coming out, is that right?
One just out last week, so that's 3 in the last year.
And that was Dongs of Devotion, was it? I got the wrong one
close.
entirely.
The Existence of My Bane.
Sorry.
So
There you go. Excellent.
Similar wordplay.
Similar wordplay. Forgive me for that one. Excellent. Thank you, Asher. Now tell us, what album are you nominating tonight?
The Lemonheads' It's a Shame About Ray is the flawless album that I am proposing.
Takes me on a rockin' stroll. You won't wait, cause I won't know. If I roll, I hope you'll throw a smile at me. Cause this here frame is all I've known. I won't be walking till I've grown. All I've been shown is everything I wanna see. People's knees and truck streets. Smile at me, looking up.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
Nice work.
So, thanks very much for that, Lemonheads. Over to you, Liam. Have you ever... Why?
Yeah, Asho,
How
how did you
and
discover
why?
Lemonheads and It's a Shame About Ray?
Well, I guess because of my age, I feel like I was always a Lemonheads fan. I think I was in Brisbane playing in bands when the first records came out, when Hate Your Friends and Lick and those really early kind of indie rock, punk rock records of Lemonheads came out. My mates and I were huge fans. So I followed them all the way along. And then this masterpiece came along. I think, what was it, album 5? Am I right in saying?
5th album, yep.
Very different from the work that they'd done before. They kind of teased to this kind of joyous, melodic power pop in the earlier records, but it was only kind of 1 or 2
Sprinkles.
songs. Yeah, little teasers. And then there was a whole cohesive album of joy that came in. What year was this one?
1992.
So 2nd, 92.
Yeah.
So were the early albums punkier? That's what I read as much more gritty and
much
stuff.
so. He had a co-writer, a guy called Ben Deity, I think is how you pronounce his name, and Ben and Evan would share the lead on songs, and Ben's songs were particularly punky and post-hardcore kind of Squirrel Bait, Slint, Dinosaur Jr. in that world.
Yeah, nice.
And and then Evan always had the voice, like for me, without question, one of my favourite vocalists, just a pure singer.
Yeah. So if you continue to follow Lemonhead, so they had a couple of albums a couple of years after that, and then they sort of started taking a bit longer breaks. Have you followed them all the way through?
Still do, yeah.
Still do, yeah.
Still, if he put out anything, I'd be jumping on to listen. No, I'm a lifelong fan, and warts and all. And to be a fan of Evan Dando and Lemonheads, you have to be prepared for anything.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right. So any of the other ones you think people should check out? Like any of the other ones that almost get to that flawless level?
Certainly, I'd say Come On Feel, the one that follows this. I think it was a bit of a 1-2 punch. I think the 2 albums are companion pieces that almost coexist together. And whatever it was in his life at the time, he was on, for that. I guess in those days they were probably 3 or 4 years apart. But in my mind, they sit perfect.
Oh, no, so
together.
those two were only 1 year apart. So,
there you go.
Come On Feel the Lemonheads came out in 93.
Yep, there you go. Because in my
1-1.
mind, they were
Close.
definitely companion pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And have you ever seen them live, Asher?
Dozens of times.
Nice.
Dozens every time.
Right.
I guess the most obvious reference to this album, because the key story for this album is its connection to Australia. It's almost an Australian album in a lot of ways, this one. So Evan Dando was supporting Fugazi, which is an interesting mix on an Australian tour. And he was playing solo, and Fugazi are legendarily straight edge and would play only at venues with no alcohol at all ages. And their support act was the loosest unit getting around.
Well, and there's references.
Yeah, legendarily loose unit.
Yeah.
And I saw them play at a venue next to the Fortitude Valley train station called Boulder Lodge. And then he did a one-off solo show at Woolloongabba. So I'm guessing that was at Van Gogh's Earlobe was the name of that venue.
Cool.
And then he went down, did the rest of the tour, and he just stayed in Sydney. And the story of this album comes off the back of that, because it is definitely, everything about it was written and inspired by his time in Sydney. So it's, even though it was recorded in Los Angeles, I feel that this is in a lot of ways an Australian album.
Yeah. It's super, like Evan Dando loves Australia. He's been here so many times. Lemonheads on his solo stuff, anything. Yeah, he loves it here in Australia. Spent a lot of time here, which is really cool.
Wow. So, Liam.
Yes.
Have you seen Lemonheads?
Well, do you want to go? Have I heard?
Let's have you heard of them? Of course you've heard of them.
I had absolutely heard of them.
You had absolutely heard
I'd
of
never
them.
listened to an album in full until I knew about this album, and it's got a very great reputation in the right cycles and everything. But when I wasn't listening to this kind of music in '92 when it came out. But the first thing that I did start getting into sort of more the alternative music was Triple J's Hottest 100 compilation in '96 from the '96 Countdown, and that had Lemonheads' If I Could Talk, I'd Tell You on it. And I love that song. That's a really cool song. I think that was off there. It must have been off Car Button Cloth, I guess. It was. And then I started listening to the outdoor types, all the singles and everything I knew and I listened to, but I'd never actually gone and listened to a full album all the way through.
So you haven't seen them live?
Not Lemonheads. I've seen Evan Dando live. Okay. Yeah, so he played a show at the Zoo at one stage.
Yes.
As under his solo moniker, but half the songs were Lemonhead songs anyway, and it was really cool. And yeah, had a great time. I didn't know many of the songs, so I looked at the set list last night, and I didn't know many of the songs. I would have been like, I don't really know these ones. And then he played like 4 of the songs that I knew, all as the encore. So I think I would have left it like really happy, like, oh, thank God he played all the ones I knew. But before that, it was just the vibe, which was really cool as well. Awesome. And I remember he also played Splendor in the Grass one year when MC5 came out. And I think he was part of their touring band as well. He played on stage with them because members of MC5, I think, have passed away. So they needed extra people up on stage. And then my wife and I were wandering around Splendor at some stage that year and saw him walk past in a drug-induced haze. Like, very clearly couldn't see anything around him. He was just sort of wandering.
Focused.
Or
not.
Not focused.
Not antithesis of...
So, we remember
there's
seeing him
lots of stories about how that was a real moment in his life. Like, that Splendor was a real... rock bottom kind of moment. So that was after that he started to get a handle on things a little bit.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Grant.
Yes.
Had you ever heard of the Lemonheads before they got nominated?
I had, and only for the cover.
Yes, I didn't mention the cover. Yes, I also knew the cover.
Which was very big in boarding school. And so when that came out, 92, that would have been my first year at high school, and you are, lower than the shadow of under the shark shit. Yeah. And, when you were allowed to be what do you call a glassy here, where you can pick up glasses at the dinners, at the formals and that. This absolutely, or Mrs. Robinson absolutely came on. So it was quite a staple, certainly on the dance floor of the Eastern Cape of South Africa for many, many years.
Yeah.
But the rest of the album, no. Could I name another song from them? No.
Yeah. So that's the question we have to ask. So the album was originally released, and then they put that song together, and it went off huge. And so they were all right. We'll repress the album and send it out again.
Yep.
So are you nominating, and do you know it as the album with Mrs. Robinson on the end, or with Frank Mills. I keep going to say Jamie Mills for some reason. Google's like, there's no such thing as Jamie Mills.
In my mind, Frank Mills
is the last one.
Song
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
there we go.
And I'm not against Mrs. Robinson. Lemonheads put at least one cover on every album they did. It was wonderful that this song opened up a lot more people to hear the record, but for me, it's the version with Frank Mills on
So
it.
Frank Mills is a cover.
Frank Mills.
Frank Mills is still a cover of a song from Rent the Musical. Why did I not write that down?
Hairspray?
Hair the Musical. Yeah. It's a song sung by a young girl who's fallen in love with a guy from the wrong side of the tracks and doesn't, she's like, I love him, but he's from the wrong side of the tracks and he's a bit smelly and grotty. And then Evan just plays it like straightforward, like doesn't gender change anything, doesn't
George Harrison.
He
looks like George Harrison from the Beatles.
Play the song. So
cool.
Super cool.
It is cool.
So we'll get to that.
So this is a big change of things because I've been listening to it like this closes with what's his face, Mrs. Robinson. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Let's go.
So Lemonheads are Evan Dando, Juliana Hatfield. At the time of recording this album was Evan Dando, Juliana Hatfield, David Ryan, Nick Dalton, who played bass on Mrs. Robinson, and then Jeff Skunk Baxter, who played the slide guitar on one of the songs. And then Juliana Hatfield would leave the Lemonheads like basically in the aftermath of this album, and then Nick Dalton, who played bass on Mrs. Robinson, would join the band permanently. Well, permanently? I'm not sure if he still is.
No, I don't think he's still there. But
I feel like Lemonheads is whatever people show up. So so the title, the name of the album is even inspired by a headline that he saw in Australia. So it was at a time when Ray Martin, well-known Australian journalist, had been fired as the host of Channel 9 or someone's morning show, whoever it is. And there was a literal headline that said, it's a shame about Ray. And Evan just picked up the paper and was like, that's an awesome phrase. I love it. I'm going to turn it into a song and an album and a whole thing.
Yes, but your research is cool.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
It is really good. Because I was going, hey, what happened to Raymond? I'm listening to the song. I'm looking at the lyrics. I mean, did he peg? No, he was just extra one of the news agencies.
Yeah. Like it's just a headline. And then, so the song itself doesn't have anything to do with Ray Martin, as far as I could tell.
No.
But
he
just saw the headline and was like, and crafted like a worldwide international hit with it.
Yeah, it is an easy song. I mean, like that one really, you'd see that would be a cool track.
Yeah,
to hit the charts.
So it charted in Australia, number 23 here in the ARIA charts, and number 36 in the US Billboard 200 as well. So got a bit of attention for like a sort of a lo-fi indie release, which is really cool. And it was produced by the Robb Brothers, who I hadn't heard of, or I don't know if they do anything else, Asher, that you knew of.
Well, they own a legendary studio in Los Angeles, and they were songwriters from the 60s, pop songwriters from the 60s. I certainly don't know of any other records that they worked on. Really strange choice as well for an indie artist like that at that time, but kind of a magical mixture.
Yeah.
I think brought something out of it for sure.
So what are the big numbers, I suppose, from your side, or what, Asher, that you really love from this album?
Well, Rock and Stroll, straight out of the blocks for a song. So that's got a really heavy Australian link to it. So that song is about Robin St. Clair's baby at the time, and Robin St. Clair was from a really loved Sydney band called Hummingbirds.
Okay.
And she ended up writing probably the biggest ever Lemonhead song that was on the next record called Into Your Arms.
Okay.
And so she'd obviously just had a baby, and it was about their experience hanging out with her baby, and just such a joyous,
it is a
people's
nice track,
knees, trunks of trees.
Yeah.
Smile at me, pretty cool.
I'm going to try.
From the point of view of a baby.
Yeah.
Like not just, there's songs that are about babies, but this is the first time I think I've ever heard that was like, I'm in the baby's point of view. I'm looking out, I can only see knees and trees and, people smiling at me all the time.
And in my mind, it's Newtown and inner West Sydney with all of the trees and the terrace houses, and they're walking around pushing the pram, being loose and weird is the way my mind pictures the time that they're having, and they're pretty happy.
So it wasn't his... Yeah, it was just they were just hanging with the baby, with Robin St. Clair and her baby. It wasn't his baby.
No,
it wasn't Evan Dano's kid.
Just a mate of his. Yeah,
right.
And
cool.
just like an instant head nodder.
Yeah, easy.
3 seconds in, I'm picturing myself as like
drums, catchy
Wayne
tune.
and Garth from Wayne's World, just like and just like nodding left and right, back and forth. It's so cool.
I really enjoyed it. In fact, these guys on this album, for mine, sounded like a bit more of a funkier version of Soul Asylum. I don't know if you remember.
Okay.
Yeah,
I know of them, but I don't know anything by them.
Runaway Train
Yeah.
would have been their biggest hit.
Mm-hmm.
But they just sounded like, I thought there were smatterings across here of Soul Asylum.
Well,
There's
it's
familiarity
very much
of
with
that.
indie music getting into country, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Taking the folk and country and Soul
Yep.
Asylum were doing exactly the same thing
Yeah.
at a very similar time.
At the same
too, you know.
time, very similar time,
Yeah.
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, really cool opening track, and goes into Confetti, which is also a really cool song.
Yeah. So it's lifts the pressure a little bit. Like it's not quite as fast, but
No.
it's like a nice, gentle acoustic pop sort of song, which I completely heard the lyrics wrong.
Did you?
Yeah. So
I probably got the lyrics what you've got, but yes.
So the phrase, the motif he uses a lot is he kinda, shoulda, sorta, woulda loved her if he could have. But I always heard that as hey Candace, shoulda, sorta, woulda loved. So instead of hey he kinda, I always heard hey Candace. So he was singing it to a woman about her partner.
Yes.
It wasn't until I actually looked up, I was like, I like that triangle idea that there was something going on,
and it
that he was
wasn't.
singing to a person.
It never
but
existed.
he was just singing to a person or about a person about someone other. But yeah,
Lyric buddies.
Yeah.
So got the same one.
super cool.
I really, really like those lyrics. Yeah. And then it's a shame about Ray. I mean, well, cool.
Well, because the other motif from the second song is he'd rather be alone than pretend, which is really cool.
That's what it
Like
says.
just a nice little deciphering your own.
Yeah. Well, it's
writing,
actually
yeah.
2 lines because I'm sorry. I'm like, yeah, okay. I
Yeah.
got that. That's the first one there, and then
But that's
he'd rather.
I think that's
be
a very
alone
like it's a
than
very
pretend.
emotionally mature
It
position
is,
to be in. It's like
isn't
no,
it?
I'm not. Yeah, I'd rather not be with someone than pretend I like them and force it. And I know that she likes me. It feels like it's kind of like she definitely likes him and loves him, but he's like, no, I don't feel that way. But I'm not going to pretend I do just so that because that way it's convenient. It's like no, I'd rather just not. I'd rather just be alone. It's really cool.
Like you say, mature, bro.
Yeah,
Like,
very mature.
how much easier is that?
Yeah,
Let's just be mature about it. Please. I'm like,
that's it. Let's just if it's not, let's just
if it's not, it's not.
Because that way lies only long-term heartbreak as well. Eventually,
Correct.
you're going to be like, well, no, hey, I stayed with you for whatever period of time it was, but it turns out I never really was that interested.
Created a bigger mess.
Yeah.
For all of us.
Yeah.
Now.
Chaos. But yes, it does lead into It's a Shame About Ray. Nice thematic song for the self-titled.
And then Rudderless, which I've written literally very Soul Asylum-ish. There you go.
Rudderless is a really important song for me for it. I think it's one of
Here we go.
the songs on the record. Well, for me, there's such an overarching theme across this record about falling in love with life for all of its flaws and all of its beauty, whether it's people or drugs. Obviously, there's a lot of drug references in this song. And like any new love, sometimes, it all feels perfect before it goes weird and dark. And falling in love with drugs has that reputation as well.
Sure.
Like, it doesn't go weird and dark in the first weekend. It takes a little while for that stuff to happen. And Rudderless is clearly him kind of reflecting on some moments where it's maybe not so perfect and so fun, but in a really clever way. It still musically has joy to it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And makes you feel good. But if you dig deep, there's some moments in there, Ship Without a Rudder, I Don't Want to Die, there's some lines.
Hope in My Past.
Yeah.
Closing with that.
So that's one of the songs where it's maybe not saying everything's a party. I'm
No.
getting a bit lost.
And that repeat of Ship Without
Yeah.
So you'd have, if he felt so inclined, he'd have a really good sing-along moment with the crowd there. 'Cause I'm sure they would sing along with that bit. Not sure he'd probably be that interested in having crowd sing-along moments generally, but he would, he's got one there if he wants it. And Juliana Hatfield has a bit more pronounced vocals on that track as well.
For sure.
She definitely features too, so that's really cool. Definitely sort of more folksy Americana. Just jumping back to It's a Shame About Ray, it was co-written with Dando and Tom Morgan,
Okay.
who is in an Australian band called Smudge, who are really cool. And then Tom Morgan, Evan Dando, and my favourite guy, Paul Dempsey, and Grant's laughing because I've tied it back to something for Kate again.
Please do.
We're in an awesome band called The Give Goods, and they put out one album, and then Paul Dempsey produced, and he did all the drumming and the keys and stuff behind it, and Dando and Tom Morgan were sort of the guitar voices.
Okay.
And then that was just like a one and done, and they
One
all
album
went. And I remember
And that's
seeing
a geography thing as well. I mean,
yeah,
like-
and I saw the Give Goods, and I have to assume, I don't remember at the time, Paul Dempsey didn't play because that I would have known.
And Evan wouldn't have played either.
Yeah,
in the
that's
shows.
what I was.
Yeah,
yeah.
I was working on that record as well.
Okay,
which was
sweet.
interesting experience. But Tom Morgan looms very large, not
Nice.
just on that song, but him and Evan probably still are in my mind, but best friends, like clicked amazingly when Evan decided to stay in Sydney.
Yes.
Tom has co-written most of the hits that the Lemonheads have ever had over
really?
the next few years, like a lot of the big songs. I'm guessing that the royalties from Lemonheads hits is what's made his life okay to be a songwriter
Nice.
Yes.
and
Wow.
not have to go and do much else,
Yes.
I imagine. And Smudge, as you say, such a cool band. And there's other connections to
Yeah.
Smudge later in this record as well.
Yeah.
But Tom looms very large in Evan's life. And yeah, those two together were much stronger together than separate.
Yeah.
So through their careers as songwriters without each other
Symbiotic.
was still very good. But when they put their heads together, it went from,
Yeah.
from a 7 to a 9.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Cool, man.
So yeah, Give Goods is in. Yeah, I've got that. I still play that to this day. That's a really cool album.
And then it's very difficult to interpret or to misinterpret number 5.
My Drug Buddy.
Yeah, well.
Nice, just a nice, like you talked before about like that connection to people, but the connection to drugs as well. And like this is a person that it's like about hanging out with someone that you do drugs with, but he says he loves her, but it doesn't really feel like it's a love, like a romantic, like a full-on romantic connection. I want to be with you. It's more just like, hey, you're this person who
Does this with me.
this thing that I love doing, and I love doing it in the moment I'm hanging out with you and we're doing it together, and there's a kind of a love there, but it's not necessarily like a pure romantic let's
That's
date
a
or
cool
anything
tune.
like that.
But,
So-
and if
Pretty
you think
hectic
about
theme.
that time as well, so that early to mid 90s time and how drugs were part of our culture and what kind of drugs were part of our culture in that time. And yeah, it's certainly there weren't songs being released that were as honest as this
No.
at the time. They
No,
were
no,
being
no.
shrouded with mystique. If you were trying to tell the story, he's just like, I'm going to score with my mates today, and I
Phone
hope
booth
there's
time. Yeah.
still some of the same stuff we got yesterday. Like, I love the honesty of it, and such a beautiful song. Like melodically, the vocal
Yeah.
performance,
yeah,
it
Got
just
the
makes me
softer
feel
and
good.
slow, lots
Yeah,
of organ pieces through it as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, sorry, you got that reference. There's still, I'm hoping something that what words to the effect of, there's still some of the same stuff we got yesterday.
So he says,
She's coming over. We'll go out walking. Make a call on the way. She's in the phone booth now. I'm looking in. There comes a smile on her face.
and it's just such a 1992 because like, why would we go out to make a phone call?
Yeah.
Now I'm like, why would you? Oh, that's right. You had to. And maybe he's living in a place that's a bit dilapidated. Maybe they haven't paid the phone bill, so they can't make phone calls there. So it's kind of
or
like,
you don't want the police to hear it.
Yeah,
stuff like
that was
that.
a
So
thing
it's like
for
you go to a
sure.
phone booth.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was just like, yeah, it's just, it seems so
Different
archaic.
wo-
like
it is.
going to
Yeah.
a phone booth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
20 something, 20. Yeah, that's right. So the 25th anniversary edition of this. No, 30.
Let's go with
sorry.
30.
The
Yeah.
25th anniversary is out now. The 30th anniversary edition comes out in a couple of weeks. So it's on their Bandcamp. So if people want to check that out, we certainly will be. Because, yeah, it's such a cool album. And then The Turnpike Down, which is sort of a bit more up-tempo. Not quite punky, but still a bit more sort of upbeat. But this is one of a couple of songs where it's actually not clear what he's singing about. Because
Yeah.
it's more of like that maybe drug-induced haze, stream of consciousness stuff. Like he's just picking words out of his brain and throwing them out there and finding words that work together well for him. But there's no clear explanation of what they're actually about. So it's... Yeah, there's only a couple of times he does it, but this is definitely one of them.
And moves swiftly into bit part, which is a real funky track. I really
Such a cool song,
Yeah. And it opens with screaming.
Do you know what that's from? The vocal sample where there's a
No.
woman screaming.
I can picture her. She's an actress. I think it might have been the Mary Tyler Moore
Okay.
shows.
Yeah.
She's an American actress of the time.
Yes.
I can't remember her name, but I can picture it. And yeah, I want to be a bit part in your life. A cameo.
Yes.
Some great
Yeah.
lines.
A
and
walk
it's
on or something.
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
such a way of, it's almost like, how do you explain that kind of love when it's all give and no take? What's the word I'm looking for?
Unrequited.
That's no, that's the other side of it. But there's the way you feel about your kids. No matter what they do, you're going to love them under any circumstance. There's a adjective that fits for that, which
Unrequited as if
is
it's not
lost on me.
returned.
But
Yeah, it'll come.
yeah.
Okay.
So it's that kind of love, and it's like I don't actually care if it's returned, but
Yeah.
you've got it all from me, and I just want a bit part in your life.
Yeah.
And it's musically and vocally, it says what the lyrics say in such a cool way. It just makes you feel,
So all
I'm
the way
happy with that,
It's got a really cool line. Nothing traumatic when I go.
Yeah.
So it's like, I just want to come in, do a thing, and if I'm not here, I don't want you to fall apart or have any kind of problems or anything that might be a problem for you. I just want to be able to step away. So it's just that bit part.
Unconditional.
Yeah, there we go. Nice.
Yes. Thank you.
All these songs are super short. This is a super short
I
song.
know.
It's like
and I
10
like
songs.
super
It's-
short.
Yeah,
Like that's like in our certainly from a flawless host's perspective.
yeah.
The short and sharp
The
work
more songs,
for the
the more songs on the album and the longer they are, the more chances there are for a
Ooh.
mistake. So it's like, if you can get 10 songs in that are all 3 minutes, it's like, And like most of them don't do a lot either. Like most of them are like 3 or 4 phrases or 3 or 4 little passages. He doesn't go into big stories. He has his idea. He puts it with some music. He puts it out and it's like, well, I'm done with that. Let's do something else. So
I know I've mentioned it, but I want to emphasize again the vocal performances.
Mm-hmm.
Like as a vocalist, incredibly underrated. Like people, when they think about the great singers in contemporary music, you rarely hear Evan Dando mentioned, but for me, right up there. Like as far as emotional connection from a vocal performance, he slays me.
Yeah.
Just a great singer.
And from with the dark themes, acknowledging the drug story, has he ever openly spoken about that and that he's gone through challenges and he's addressed it? Or?
Well, my understanding at the time, he all through his career when it comes to media and stuff,
Yes.
he absolutely just to tell the truth.
Okay.
So there was a time
Right,
when he couldn't do an interview. Might have been after this album going into Come On Feel, and that's where If I Could Talk I Would Tell You comes from. He was meant to do a big interview like Rolling Stone or Spin Magazine or something, and he couldn't talk because he'd been smoking too much crack. And he wrote it down for the interview and said, sorry, I can only write answers for you because I've been smoking too much crack. So his whole life as a human and an artist, the way he's communicated through song or in interviews or with his audience is brutal honesty, and it's just like what you see is what you get. It's kind of flawed, and particularly the live shows, like legendarily, maybe 2 out of 10 are going to be a good one. Like I probably
really, huh?
I would have seen at least 10, and that number would be right. Most of them are pretty scary.
Because he's unplayable.
Train wrecks and
Yeah, the thing there's a few bands around that have that reputation of like, if you want to go and see them, you hope you get them on a good night. Because if I think it was the Vines as well, were definitely like that as well.
Sure.
It's like, you really want to hope you get them on a good night, because if it's a bad night, it's just going to be a bad night for everybody. So it's
And when you say that, like, it's not just him. Like everyone's just
generally
off.
him. So
Just
the rest
him.
of the band were
Is it
regularly
okay?
frustrated,
Okay.
and they'd be going, pretty tight usually, and
Yeah,
trying their
yeah.
best, and they'd be going, where's he going?
Yeah.
What's happening? Is he going to turn up? There was certainly long periods of his career. I think the last couple of times I've seen Lemonheads play, they were much tighter. His voice was a little
as he gets
weary,
bit older.
He'd
it's going to
done,
happen.
he'd done a bit of damage to it. I think it wasn't quite the same, but
No filter will do that. Just having a filter.
Yeah.
Because there was a thing I read online where he used to, because he was now part of like the rock and roll scene and stuff, and he'd go up and hug Courtney Love, and he did something with Kurt Cobain that was a bit weird.
Yeah.
But he said that his the people around him, like his record people and his promotion people, would tell him, hey, if you get the inkling, go and do it, because you'll get the reputation as the crazy guy and everyone will want to know you. And he didn't necessarily want to do it all the time, but he just felt like that's what he had to do to maintain.
Yeah,
his
he
thing.
did say that he didn't have anyone around him pulling him back.
Yeah.
No one was taking care of him and going, maybe you shouldn't smoke crack this morning before that show
Yeah,
or whatever.
sure.
It was quite the opposite. It was be you, he was encouraged to be loose and all of that. And it might have been cool to have a tour manager or someone around to go, hang on.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone
Maybe
with a bit more of
Maybe have a lemon.
just rail guards.
Yeah. And just go, party on non a show day.
Sure.
Wait till the weekend or your Monday night or whatever.
Yeah.
And,
Well, after the show,
Yeah.
and then do the 2-day bender or whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, lots of ups and downs in Evan Dando's life. Allison's starting to happen. nice chunky strangled guitar stroke. So
Yeah.
another something for Kate reference. Paul Dempsey opens like half of his songs with like holding onto the string really tight and then just thrashing the guitar and then sliding into it, which is really cool.
So this is a big Smudge reference as well. Alison is the drummer from Smudge.
Okay, sweet.
So yeah, Alison's getting a tit pierced. Alison's growing a mohawk.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever seen photographs of Alison Galloway from Smudge, but one of the most beautiful women still. But when she was in her 20s and this was going on, she was just the coolest. Like no one. Not many
no one
people
could touch it.
Cooler than watching Alison Galloway play drums. And then they wrote a song about her on this record and have made it into folklore.
Yeah.
But such a cool story. Just write a song about my mate and her growing into something
yeah.
cooler. Yeah. That's what it's about. But
Straighty.
great song too.
That is a cool song. Really cool song.
So he says on that one, so yeah, just that. It's almost awkward if it's about a real person because it's kind of like starting to develop a crush on this person.
Yeah.
Sure, they were friends or they knew each other or what have you. But yeah, and just the super fast, another like really nice head nodder. I think it felt like it was, if their previous albums were kind of more punky, it felt like this would have been like a bit of a callback to that and sort of giving people something, a bit of the taste of what they had on their previous album. So,
and I don't know that he's really, I don't think of him as one of the great lyricists. I think of him as one of the great singers and one of the great vessels for maybe other people's lyrics, but that's a great lyric. I'm imagining Evan wrote that one. It wasn't Tom, I'm not sure, but it's
I didn't have
it's
I
pretty
think that one was
great.
straight up Evan.
That is a beauty.
Grant, any other songs that you really love that we haven't touched on just
No,
yet?
look, I enjoyed both Hannah and Gabby and Kitchen, and then like the reference around ceiling fan in my spoon. Even for me, a very naive man in relation to dabbling in the dark side of drugs. I'm like, well, sure, but that must be that's not a breakfast cereal spoon that this man's referring to.
Yeah, you're right. That's the companion to Rudderless on the album. That's the other song I think that is okay. Maybe I should put the brakes on.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed Frank Mills. I thought like it's a really cool cool track as well.
Just to jump back to Kitchen, it's unfortunate George couldn't be here because this is basically like a checklist of all the things that she loves in a song.
Yeah.
It's got bongo drums, it's got hand claps, it's got sirens at one stage, there's oohs and ahs, there's like multiple guitar parts doing stuff, there's like the female vocalizing, there's like a wailing guitar solo and then more of that chunk. So it's just like a lot of the other songs in the album were quite straightforward, and then they just took all the experimentation and all the weird musicianship and instrumentation and just threw it into this one song.
I think the producers had a bit to do with this song, like when the doo-wop oohs and
Yeah.
ahs in it. Like when you think about 60s pop writers and producers, in my mind, I'm going, I don't think that's something that Evan Dando would have thought
Would
of.
have all in his own.
Certainly naturally,
Sure.
knowing all of his songwriting to this point, I'm like, but it's cool. Kitchen,
It is cool.
Fantastic.
How it all happened is how it all started in the kitchen.
Yeah.
There you go.
And that
Nice.
one's co-written by Nick Dalton, who was about to become their permanent bass player too. So
Who is also worth mentioning because of the Sydney connection. So Nick runs still a very cool indie label in Sydney called Half a Cow.
Yes.
Who I'm pretty sure were putting out Smudge and Hummingbirds records at the time. Part of the same gang that befriended Evan and went on to play the bass in Lemonheads for
and
some
early
years.
Sidewinder stuff too. So we've done
Okay.
Sidewinder before.
Done
So all
Sidewinder,
I think not their albums, but when they were EPs and their early singles and stuff, they were on Half a Cow.
Awesome.
So yeah, awesome, very awesome label.
Any other songs you want to talk to? There,
I was just thinking, Frank Mills is just like I said, it's a cover of a song from Hair the Musical. It's just him and an acoustic. So, and it almost, you hear him say, "You ready?" at the start. So it's almost one of those things where it's like, oh, I've just got this song in my head that I'm going to play. You can record it if you like, and we'll just see if I end up using it or we may not use it. Like, it didn't necessarily feel like a big pre-planned thing. It was just going, "You ready?" Yeah, okay. We'll just, because it's just him and the acoustic guitar, which is, very cool. And then, so you said you nominated the version without Mrs. Robinson.
Yeah.
But we did take some notes. I did get some notes on Mrs. Robinson.
Okay.
Evan Dando hates Mrs. Robinson, the song, and he literally only recorded it because he wanted to piss off Paul Simon. And then Paul Simon was like, "I hate your version," and Evan Dando was like, "Awesome, that's literally
I've achieved what I wanted to
literally
do. I've done what I wanted to do."
Apparently, Art Garfunkel kind of okay with it, but Paul Simon hated it, and he was like, "Cool," because I hate you and I hate this song. So
Why?
all I want to do
Why
is
doesn't he like
piss
Paul
you off.
Simon?
I have no idea,
bizarre.
but this was all the
That's documented, sure, okay.
Told American songwriter he hated the song as well as its author, and that recording was only to promote a 25th anniversary home video release of The Graduate. He noted Simon greatly disliked the cover, but Garfunkel was more favoured. Paul Simon hates our version, and that was our aim. We played it to make him hate it. So we achieved our goal.
It was also the way to be in when alternative was becoming mainstream.
Of course.
To hang on to these things and be anti the legends that came before you. I'd be surprised if he felt the same way today about that, because that song has had a lot to do with
What's made him?
his career.
Yeah, like
But I think this interview, I don't think it was from too long ago, though. Like, not just recently, but I don't think it was from when it came out. I think it was somewhere like 15 years maybe after it came out or something.
Wow.
There you go. So you're still not so fond
He's just, but like you said, just completely upfront. Like, most people wouldn't say that. Most people are like, oh yeah, it was a tribute to a songwriter I really respect, or a song I really love, or something.
So how does that come about then, that he gets that does the producer or their manager say, hey, listen, we want you to cover this and we've got the rights already, it's fine, and off you go? Is it as simple as that?
Someone on his team would make a suggestion and he went through with it, and then somebody on his team put it out and made it work.
Yep.
And whilst he's not getting paid royalties for the recording of that, a lot of people bought tickets to see Lemonheads play because of that song. Like a lot.
Yeah.
He didn't play it at the zoo. That zoo show that I saw him, and I imagine at the time I was pissed. Yeah. But now looking back, especially knowing what I know now, I'm like, okay, that's fine. I wouldn't have.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, I imagine at the time I was.
It's what you do for exposure. I mean, as you say, you know, at the time. Okay. All right. Well, look. Anything else you want to talk?
No, that's all good. I'm all good. If you want to go to,
I'm happy to go for final pitch for Lemonheads. It's a shame about Ray. Over to you, Asho, please.
Well, my final pitch on it is about the way music makes you feel and connects with you emotionally. So for me, the entire 40 minutes or however long this album goes for, from start to finish, makes me feel great, and made me feel great from the first time I heard it to the hundreds and hundreds of listens until this morning when I played it again, and it made me feel great. And whilst there's a element of nostalgia, I guess, in it.
Sure.
It's
not
30
just years
that.
old.
It's not just that, though. It's still, for me, it just is almost perfect music. In it just brings joy, even though there's moments of darkness.
Sure.
The album, it's not twee. It just is full of joy. I love the story of the Australian connection. It does visually put me in the inner western suburbs of Sydney and make me feel like I'm
and Newtown's cool, bud. I know Newtown.
And all of that. And and I guess being a fan for many years before the band had success,
you saw them.
and many years afterwards, I'm like, it's stayed with me for 30 years, and I'll play it for the rest of my life, I'm sure, and it'll bring me much joy.
Yeah.
Great. Nice. Thank you. Liam, over to you, sir. A thumbs up or a thumbs down for It's a Shame About Ray by the Lemonheads?
Yeah. So like I said, this is the first time I'd heard a full album by them. And I knew Evan Dando enough to know the kind of stuff that he did, but I hadn't listened to it all the way through. Really cool to have, like, you can feel lots of different elements in there. And it's 1992, so he's drawing from country and stuff that he probably grew up on, but also folk. Occasionally a little bit of grunge sound in there, just in the guitar parts, that sort of stuff. That's really cool all the way through. I'm a bit torn.
Oh.
So
here we go.
A lot of the times when we do if an album's flawless or not, we go, all these songs were awesome, amazing songs, but this one I didn't get into.
Yeah.
This case, there's nothing that I didn't get into. There's nothing that I was like, this would be better if it wasn't on the album or it's out of place or whatever. But there were just enough songs that I kind of listened to and I went, okay, that's nice. And I didn't really get anything much more out of it. So Bit Part in Your Life, I think, is a really cool concept. But I just listened to it and went, oh yeah, okay, cool. And I moved on. And then same with Hannah and Gabby and just a couple of other songs. So I'm going to say no that it's I don't think it's flawless for me. But I'll also say, learning about Evan Dando, most people build albums to be, hey, this is my big document, my thing that I want to tell people. It's my magnum opus. Every album is a big effort. Evan Dando doesn't feel like he puts albums together like that. So when I say it's not flawless, it's almost like, because Evan Dando doesn't try to make flawless albums. He just puts songs together. Like, you can't finish an album on a solo acoustic cover of a song from the Hair musical and go, but I want this album to be taken really seriously and it's a really big deal. reading interviews and stuff with him, it doesn't feel like he's shooting for, this is my album, this is my big important thing that I have to tell people. It's more like, here's a bunch of songs that I have. I probably did like 3 times as many as I've got on the album, and these are the ones that I picked, and here it is. And putting albums out is just my way of staying connected to music, and I like performing, I like writing. But more than I think any other album we've ever looked at, this album didn't feel like it wanted to be flawless. So I'm going to say no.
Wow.
But with the ticket, I just don't feel like that's what he was aiming for anyway.
Totally agree. But
thank you, because I know you know more about Evan than I do.
For me, it's flawless.
Yeah.
Because of almost
probably because of that.
Yeah. Because of that, because he didn't care.
And I was thinking, I was like, that make like if he's too cool.
We're
to
getting
be
deep
cool,
here, guys.
Yeah.
If he's too cool to be cool, doesn't that make him the coolest? And I should say it is flawless, but it is a couple of those songs that I don't really get anything out of. But it's like it's saying no, and you know how normally we go. And if I was going to produce the album, I'd get them to do this.
Yeah,
and I'd take
move
this
that.
song out,
or,
and I'd
yeah.
move that. I was like, no, there's no point doing it. There's no point doing any of that.
Yeah.
No.
He didn't make this for anyone to think it was flawless. It's just a bunch of songs that he likes. And so I say no, like with the lightest heart that I've ever said no to before, because I'm just like, and I don't think he cares, and I don't think that's what he was aiming for anyway.
There you go. Wow. Thank you.
Grant,
Yes.
final thoughts and a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Look, I came into this with, as I said, Mrs. Robinson. That was the only track that I'd ever heard of. And to really, I suppose, cut it short, well, in fact, this may have happened once in the 105 odd episodes that we've done before, whereby I wasn't sure going in whether we were including the last song. Mm-hmm. And so I left my house going, it's not going to be flawless, because whilst I appreciate everything up to Mrs. Robinson in there as track 13 for me, like, is not with the theme of any of the rest of the stuff. It's just not there.
Sense.
And we've in previous episodes denied or not said it was flawless because it was written by someone else, or it's like an add-on. And so
so it's not, we don't hate covers, but if it's like if all of your songcraft is about your words, and then you throw in a cover that's someone else's words that don't feel connected to your words, then that's a big.
Then it doesn't go. Yeah. So coming into this session, I was like, it's nice, but I can't say because they've been silly about Mrs. Robinson. Now you've dropped Mrs. Robinson, and I'm going, hey, I like Frank Mills, and I like the guitar solo at the end. So for mine, I do think it is flawless.
Nice.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was great to listen to them, to listen to the album in its entirety, and yeah, it's a flawless from me. And thanks very much for bringing it, Asher. Much
Thank you
appreciated.
for having me, guys.
All good. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
So, and thank you to all the listeners. We have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are Flawless AMP and all of those. So you can join the conversation, share or like our posts, or give us a rating. Remember, every little bit helps us find more music lovers like you. As mentioned, we also have the Patreon at patreon.com/flawlessamp. If you'd like to back us, please check that out. Thanks again for listening, and also have a listen and check out Foot Stomp on all the socials, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Telling Angela and I don't want the $2 back. Just